Hello Internet, I'm Dan.
And I'm Chaz, and this is Wine is Serious Business, episode 140. We're here at one of our favorite wineries with Dag and Dan, the owner of Johan Vineyards and the winemaker of Johan Vineyards, respectively. So, yeah, here to try out some of their newer wines.
Introduce yourselves quick and say a little bit about what's been exciting for you in the last year at the winery.
Yeah, I'm Dag Johan Sundby, the owner of Johan Vineyards. Last year, 11 was a challenge too, but the latest we've ever picked fruit, and we've had to sit through some weather and all that, and we're excited to see what came out of that year, because if we get through a year like that with some nice wines, we feel a little bit more bulletproof than we did before. And also, I think we've had a decent start to this year, and the weather now in July has been great. So I'm looking forward to a great growing season this year.
Excellent. What about you? Any news from the past year?
The most exciting things for me in the past year is the wine that you're pouring there, and a couple other varieties that we just planted in the vineyard. I'm really excited to try some different things. Try to be a little bit of innovators here in the Willamette Valley and try different varieties and different styles of wines, and try to have fun with what we do.
Cool. And that's one of the things I've always really liked about Johan too. And in addition to their just like high quality wines, like good farming practices, that you guys take the effort and some risk to try and innovate, always makes for exciting visits and fun to see what's going on. And we'll get into farming practices pretty soon. What's the first wine on the list? No label.
Yeah, this is a barrel sample of our 2011 Grüner Veltliner. It's the first year we work with this varietal, and we're pretty excited about it.
Cool.
Yeah, so this wine is, we're doing it a little differently, of course, like I was just mentioning before about our ideas of the way we want the direction of the winery to go. This wine, we really took an influence from FX Pichler, and trying to do some of the things that he's doing with like their M and their higher end, more barrel fermented, a little bit more skin contact, and just a little richer style of a Grüner Veltliner.
That definitely comes through on the nose. I'm getting like some good like lemon peel and spice, but there is kind of like that touch of roundness to it, which I like. Not quite like butter, but maybe a little bit
of richness or something going on there behind all the lemony flavors.
Very full nose. I really like that.
Totally. What made you guys want to do Grüner here specifically?
Well, it's basically a grape variety that we think will do well on this site. It's a cooler climate varietal, and obviously we enjoy Grüner Veltliner, so we wanted to try to make some ourselves.
Awesome. Hey, you don't see very much of it in the valley.
The integration of this is pretty impressive. I think I really
like
like
for a barrel sample.
I really like how that's showing already. I think a lot of Grüners that I've been exposed to can be really angular, and like that lemon peel thing I was talking about, the acidity can be a little harsh, and I even maybe I like a little bit of that sometimes, but this really has some elegance to it right out of the gate.
Thanks. Yeah, basically we brought the fruit in, and we crushed and destemmed it, and then soaked it on its skins for 3 days prior to the pressing of the fruit, and then we pressed the fruit, put it into tank, let it settle for a day, and then put it down into barrel. And we used 500 liter barrels, which is a double sized barrel, a little bit over double of a normal barrique barrel.
And new or neutral?
One once used and one neutral.
Okay.
The idea is to keep the same barrels and get more neutral on them as they go. Barrel fermented it and went through ML a little bit. Definitely went through its funky stage and was pretty wild there for a while. And now that it's settled down and it's maturing in barrel, it's really coming out beautifully. It's
absolutely. The barrel's like there's a sense of softness to it. I mean, there's like a lot of acidity, right? But it's like very, very soft and easy to drink. It's very nice.
Really nice apple flavors that linger long on the palate too. I'm seriously impressed that you get this kind of quality off your first run with these grapes too. So, like, those of you who are kind of nerds about what's going on in the Oregon wine scene, like, seriously, this is something you've got to check out just to see, you know, what some local folks are doing with an interesting grape in the area. It definitely is boy, fun to try, and I really look forward to seeing where it goes in the future.
And I was excited with 2011 vintage, being that it's the latest harvest that we've had so far in the history of Johan, which is a very short history. But it tells me that we can ripen it year in and year out, so it's a pretty good indicator.
Yeah, I suppose that's cool, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you'll be able to work with it all the time.
We'll bottle this wine in beginning of September and should release it around Thanksgiving later.
Yep.
And this will come in on the under the Johan label, right?
Yep.
Okay. Awesome.
Johan Estate Grüner.
Oh, well,
That's all right.
that's okay. Yeah. I can rinse you.
Yep.
Moving on to the second wine here. This is another new project that they've got going on here at Johan. What do you guys want to talk about the Farmlands label and the white wine?
Yeah. First, I can talk a little bit about the project itself. You know, we decided to come out with a second label with a totally different feel to it. We're trying to promote biodynamic farming and winemaking through these bottles, and keep them as, you know, pure as we can, with as little influence as we can to really let the site show through these bottles. And also we've lowered the cost in making it, you know, it's all neutral oak,
Cool.
and a quicker turnaround. So we're trying to lower the cost a little bit, so we can reach a wider, you know, range of people, you know, a little bit of a younger crowd, wine savvy crowd that care about what they eat and what they drink, and, you know, what's actually in the bottle, not just, you know, the taste of the wine itself, but
Nice.
what you're actually drinking. So it's all estate grown. It's going to be all biodynamic certified, and yeah, a fun little project. And we wanted to capture, with the label, we wanted to capture kind of the essence of Oregon. You know, we're farmers here making wine, you know, so we have these images of vineyard equipment, and you know, tried to make that in a cooler and, you know, a little bit of a hip, trendy way.
Excellent. Yeah, and it's been exciting to see. You said these are going to be about $20?
Yeah, 22, 18,
Something
22.
like that?
Yep.
And you know, there really aren't very many, you know, biodynamic wines around those price points on the market. So I think it really is a good opportunity for people to be able to support, you know, the kind of farming that's good for the earth, that's good for the people involved for, and to support people who, you know, who are growing the grapes directly and making the wine with a lot of care.
And on top of it, we're also donating a portion of the proceeds to Friends of Family Farmers, which is a local Oregon organization that's a nonprofit organization that raises money and does educational seminars for the small family farmers, and also does a lot of the lobbying for the small family farmers, just to protect the tiny little farms that don't have the money to lobby in Washington or in Salem. And
That's great.
it's a really great organization.
Yeah, that's really cool. So charitable as well. Keep an eye out for it.
So what's the blend of this wine?
So the blend in here is about 65% Chardonnay, 25% Grüner Veltliner, and then 5% each of some Pinot Gris and some Pinot Noir.
Wow.
And what goes into this bottle would probably vary a little from year to year, like how ripe things are and the yields and stuff out there. But,
Right.
but yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing to note on this is they're all co-fermented too. It wasn't that they were all
okay.
separately and then blended.
Wow.
All the juice went into
One
the
tank.
Yeah, one tank, and then we did about 10% in neutral barrels,
Okay.
to add a little bit more
about
than
a
that.
third, I'd say.
About a third,
Mhm.
and just to add some more roundness to it, and
Right.
add more of that stamp of our the way we do white wines is typically all in
barrel.
fermented. So we wanted to add a little of that to it.
Nice.
Getting some crisp acidity on the nose here too, or like sensations of it again, like from in the citrus direction. kind of some green apples, and then a little bit of like earthy funk too, which I don't see a whole lot in white wines, but it provides, yeah, like kind of some interesting character. Lets me think about it a little more.
And the apple flavors here are just really fresh and nice. Like, very, very delicious.
Left you dry after the rinse there. It's no good.
It's interesting to see. I mean, the Chardonnay definitely comes out a lot on the palate, but the Grüner is sort of there back, providing that like, sort of like limes, hard on the finish. You know,
Totally limes.
Yeah, and then also aromatically, I get a lot of the Grüner aromatically, and I was really surprised on that because it's, you know, usually when you do put any amount of Chardonnay in a blend, it usually just dominates the whole thing. But the Grüner really seems to shine through, even though it's a much smaller percentage.
it does quite a bit.
Got some pepper in there, you know, some of the Grüner, you know, more spicy, peppery notes.
Just a little bit like almost like a rockiness and minerality too, just on the finish with the acidity, right? It's like almost has a texture to it, and very nice.
Yeah, I really like how the acidity sits on the palate. It lingers on the finish a long time, gives it that nice crisp feeling on the finish that kind of keeps you reaching for another glass. You know, a little bit of complexity and just good integration already, especially at this price point. So it's
This price point, man, that's awesome.
Yeah, real enjoyable.
Good job.
Yeah.
Yep.
Man.
So these wines are being released today. So as we sit here, we're getting ready to set up for a little release party on the background here. So yeah.
Yeah, so you should be able to see them in stores around town, and some wine bars I know are pouring it as well. So yeah, keep your eyes out for it.
Definitely worth seeking out.
Man, the apple flavors are just so nice on that. Just good, crisp feel.
That's super delicious.
Rinsing out with the red here.
Yep.
And
the first 2011 Pinot I've had. This will be the.
Yeah.
Have I even had? Have we had 2011
yeah,
Pinot?
I'm trying to think. I think I've had some barrel samples, but I don't think I've had one from bottle. So.
All right.
So we were talking about your farming methods before, and we had agreed in some emails beforehand we wanted to talk about biodynamic farming. I guess we'll just keep it on the surface to start with. Like what do you think is the most compelling reason for why you guys decided to go biodynamic for Johan Vineyards?
Well,
you both answer that, I guess.
Yeah,
with your own thoughts.
For me, it's really the quality of the wines. It's really to preserve terroir. I'm a firm believer in terroir, and I want every site to show its fullest potential. And I think that it's really the only way to go about showing the most pure expression of our vineyard site.
Nice. What about you? What captured your imagination about it?
Well, I mean, that's obviously, you know, a very important thing. And also for me, you know, I'm young and I want to preserve this land for as long as I can. You know, I'd like to live out here and enjoy it for many years from now. So I want to be as gentle as I can on the property. But I mean, ultimately, it's all about the wine.
Awesome. This is 2011 Farmlands Pinot Noir.
So is this all estate fruit? Then? Okay.
This is all estate fruit. So this wine is a little different than all the other Pinots that we made in that we bottled this pretty early to preserve its freshness and its and really capture its youthfulness.
Which I think you've done, just in the nose, I can tell.
Yeah, it needs a little air to open up, and once it does, it really shines through, and it's got a lot of bright acidity to it, and some nice tannins to it, and just a really youthful, juicy wine.
What's the alcohol on this one?
12%.
Wow, low. Yeah.
Some nice strawberries and raspberries coming through on the nose for sure.
You got to keep in mind, like, how late last year was, too. I mean, we're picking Pinot Noir as late as, you know, November 4th. And, you know, if we can do this with no masking of the wine, you know, with new oak or any other influence, you know, this is what it is. You know, we're pretty excited about being able to do that.
Yeah, and it's just have those good fruit flavors just as an essential part of the vineyard, right? Like, you know, cold year, warm year. it's great to see that come through. You were talking earlier about how there's like the peppery note, a little bit of a peppery note, and I'm totally seeing that in the nose too,
Right.
which I like. I enjoy that.
Almost pick up like a stemminess to it too, but it's like a fresh blackberry patch or something like that, right? You got the end of the stems on the blackberries. Really, really neat.
Fruit shows a little darker on the palate. It's kind of like the raspberries are mixing with some blackberries there. Get a little of that little stemmy note kind of mixed in with the tannins toward the finish as well. And nice acidity again. It's just a good kind of crisp, refreshing feel to it.
This is drinking really. How long ago did you guys bottle this?
About
End of May.
yeah, end of
Okay,
May,
so
like
it's been
6 weeks, a month and a half. That's it.
This is drinking fantastic. I mean, like, fruit flavors are right there, but there's a lot of just a lot of weight and like, I shouldn't say weight, but it's like intensity, right? I mean, just and it never dies off. There's no gaps here. I mean, like, the fruit flavors are there. The acidity picks right up with it, and just right on through the finish. It's awesome at the price point. Wow. It's
Thanks.
That's
Thanks. Really, the
good.
and the
It's
idea
really
of this
good.
wine, as I was saying earlier, it was early to bottle. The idea is to it came out of Cru Beaujolais. We tried to preserve that freshness and the acidity and the nice tannin feel. Of course, it's Pinot Noir and not Gamay, but I think it really drinks like Cru Beaujolais.
That's a pretty reasonable comparison, I think.
It is.
That's pretty solid. Back to the farming, I guess. What are when you're trying to differentiate biodynamic farming from conventional farming or even organic farming? What parts of the biodynamic process are most important to you when you're caring for the vineyards?
For me, there's you got to look at biodynamics as a whole. Though.
All right.
You can't really segment it out. I mean, there's some things that are maybe not as pertinent as others, but the nuts and bolts of it really is to create a self-sustaining organism that really feeds on itself and only needs to take from itself to produce a product that really speaks of that specific place. So, as of recently, we got 4 cow on the property, so we're using the cows for mowing and whatnot. They do a little work around the property, and they also give us some manure for making some of our preparations, and also for compost for fertilization of the property. And in turn, the grapes will give back their seeds and stems and their skins, and all that goes back into the compost, which goes back into the earth. It's really just creating an ecosystem on its own. So we try to think of Johan Vineyards as its own ecosystem, and we're really trying to work on building that ecosystem and building up the microbes in the soil and really create a real healthy environment for the grapevines, so we don't have to reach out to the conventional agricultural world and grab all these different fertilizers that are all petrol fertilizers that come from the oil industry, and just to really make our farm sustain itself. And we're talking about terroir, and terroir is all about this farm, this specific farm, and we want it to feed on itself and to really express that it comes from Johan Vineyards.
get as little outside influence as possible, right?
Exactly.
Not talking about the fertilizers and anything else.
Exactly.
Yeah, like no herbicides, no pesticides, right?
Now that's kind of a falsity. No herbicides for sure.
Okay.
For me, that's one of the most important things about organic farming and creating a terroir. Herbicides basically go through, you spray them under, most people spray them under their vines, and to kill the weeds. For us, we want to use those weeds as nutrients for the vines. So we'll cultivate under the vines, knock the weeds down, turn them into the soil, and then that becomes food for the microbes, and then the microbes turn that into food for the vines, and it's just a big cycle. It's this ecosystem that we're talking about. The other thing too is the pesticides. So you're talking about pesticides. This is a real sensitive subject for me to talk about. It's you know, every vineyard in the world needs to use fungicides. Our number one pest in the vineyard is powdery mildew. Number two is botrytis. You know, and everybody knows, you know, you try to get botrytis in white wines and make some beautiful dessert wines, but you know, you definitely don't want it in Pinot Noir or anything you're trying to make into a still table wine. But those two fungus, you'd need fungicides for. Every vineyard in the world uses them. Now it's just to what type you use, whether it's an organic, softer chemical that may be a little bit riskier to use because it doesn't have the potency of some of the conventional chemicals that can, a lot of them are systemic chemicals, so they're absorbed in through the leaves and then transported throughout the entire vine. And those are the ones that really scare me, and that's the typical conventional fungicide that's used. And you can go on, you can go 21 days without spraying, which is just, that's a lot of amount of time. If you think about how fast a grapevine grows at the beginning of the season, that, you know, you start off at 4 to 6 inches, and within 3 weeks you could be 18 to 24 inches tall in your canopy, so you got that much new growth. And these systemic pesticides stay in the vine that long, and you just think about it, those things just transport through the phloem and xylem of the plant. They get transported into the fruit, and they're just all over the entire inside of that vine. And for me, that's scary. I don't think I want to consume that myself.
Right. It ends up
You know,
in the
so
wine. Yeah.
exactly. And so I'd rather stick with these organic fungicides that are a lot softer. They're contact only, so you get them on the surface and they kill the fungus right there at that point. And they don't go throughout the vine, and they wear off in a week to 10 days, maybe 14 days, and then it's gone. It just gets weathered away, and then we have to go back and spray again. You know, so we're constantly trying to spray these organic sprays to keep the fungus down.
Requires
Now,
a little more effort.
It does,
Yeah.
a little bit more effort, maybe a little bit more cost. That some of the chemistries are more expensive. Some of the stuff we spray are biologicals. So it's something that happens in nature. So we spray out a bacteria like Bacillus subtilis, which is one of the most common biologicals, and that's basically a bacteria. And this bacteria creates naturally in nature it creates a defense mechanism. It puts out this chemical that will kill fungus like powdery mildew or botrytis.
Right.
So we put that kind of stuff out. We also use baking soda a lot. It just changes the pH of the outside environment, and it kills that fungus. It can't live in that environment. And then also when we reach into biodynamics has 508, what they call 508, which is horsetail and made into a tea, and then sprayed out into the vineyard. And horsetail is really high in silica. It's a potassium silicate, and then also you can do fresh or fermented, and the fermented has microorganisms itself, that those microorganisms that ferment in the tea help fight those fungus and bacteria.
It's like kombucha
just
for
like
the vines,
kombucha,
right?
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So, boy, definitely I learned something there, and hopefully that's interesting for you folks watching. But and like a real takeaway, right? Like this stuff that's much gentler to the vines, to the earth, and a lot more labor intensive. So, you know, like anything that's got more care put into it, it's generally a little more expensive. And to see, you know, and this stuff is just recently certified too, right? So they've gone through the extra effort to get inspected and signed off by Demeter as, you know, certified biodynamic. Like to see that on the shelf is, yeah.
I think
really
the
awesome.
other thing to add to the Demeter certification not only says that you do that in the vineyard, but it also says you do that in the winery, meaning that we don't add acid, sugar. We use native yeast all the time. We use native malolactic fermentation all the time. It also certifies that our winery is also its own ecosystem.
Wow.
No enzymes, no copper,
Yeah.
all the
No,
nasty stuff
no
that can go in
tannins.
there.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's a hard commitment. That's really like, you know, standing out there like we're gonna do it. You know, we're gonna stick with our beliefs, do it this way all the time, and it's impressive. So.
And the wine's
Yeah.
turned out impressive. I think the juiciness you were talking about earlier, right? It's just very juicy and easy to drink. Good stuff, but it has the tannins, has the backbone that suggests something a little more serious. Good stuff. All right, so the big boy.
Going to wrap things up with wine number 4. This is the 2009 version of the 3-barrel. This is their top Pinot Noir blend. The 2008 was both Chaz and my one of our favorite Pinot Noirs from the 2008 vintage in Oregon. So you're right, big vintage, a lot of fantastic wines, and Dan and Dog here did some
Knocked it out of
excellent
the park.
work. Excellent work. So yeah, so looking forward to sharing this one with you guys too.
So surprising for 2009. Like I remember what the nils was, but what's the alcohol content on this wine? Pretty low, right?
Yeah, it's probably 12.5%.
So not your typical 2009,
12.4.
right? A lot of 2009s came in pretty hot. What was the difference here that kept the alcohol percentage so low?
It's really the Van Duzer corridor.
Okay.
So what's commonly known as the Van Duzer corridor, it's an east to west running corridor from the ocean. And as we get really hot days, like it's been the last couple days, the valley becomes a heat sink, and it pulls these maritime breezes through that east to west running corridor, and we're like right in the mouth to it as it enters into the Willamette Valley, and those winds just keep pulling across our vineyard. And usually it kicks up about 2 o'clock every day, and the hottest part of the day it has these real cooling maritime breezes blowing across the vineyard, which helps with also with our organic farming, and it helps with disease resistance and disease pressure.
breeze
Gets
is good
that
for that.
airflow through there, exactly. And then on top of it, it just cools us down. We're usually 2 to 3 degrees cooler here than, say, Yamhill Carlton.
Okay.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Which
yeah.
is much further north.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so that breaking point, it's like Yellow Hills also takes a lot of benefit from the Van Duzer corridor, and down probably south of McMinnville, we really benefited from that in 2009, and those that we're a lot cooler throughout the growing season, especially, I don't know if you guys remember 2009, but in July we had a stretch of 100-degree days, and then again towards the end of September we had a stretch of 90s and 100s, which really in those areas north of McMinnville, their sugar started spiking at that point. But for us, our grape maturity was a little bit further behind them, so we weren't actually building sugars like they were, so we didn't get this spike in sugars, and our grapes just naturally ripened really slowly and took their time and developed flavor without developing a lot of sugar.
Nice.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, seems that the Van Duzer corridor has a kind of a moderating effect on this vineyard. You know, the hot years were usually quite a bit cooler and later than most other vineyards, and in cold years we're pretty much harvesting the same time as the rest of them. So yeah, a little bit of a moderating effect too.
That's fantastic.
Maybe.
And a very unique site out of all of the Willamette Valley too. Like you guys have, yeah, like cool place right here. So
How big is your total? I mean, I know you guys have been planting more grapes. How big are you guys now?
Well, we're farming 62 acres now.
Okay.
And we still, this year we plan on selling 2/3 of that to other wineries in the valley. So growing grapes and selling grapes is still a big part of our operation here.
I see.
getting some great cherry notes on the nose here, like fully ripe. Maybe some of them are a little dried out, a little bit of the earthy character coming through, and like the drier cherry skins. A little bit of roses, I think, too.
A little bit of spices too, like almost, like I don't want to say cinnamon full out, but there's just something there, right? Like
like maybe cinnamon baked into something, or something like that. Yeah,
or maybe nutmeg even.
Yes,
This kind of gives
sort
that
of baking
baking spice.
spice,
Yeah. It's 100% whole cluster again.
Okay. The stemminess doesn't jump out.
No.
Out of this, as some wines it can.
Yeah, and I think, and I really attribute that to our site too. Going back to terroir, we tend to get our stems tend to get really lignified or woody. So when we're putting them in the fermenter, they're not this bright green, real, like, I don't know, fresh green flavors. We're getting more,
which can transmit to the wine sometimes.
Right, exactly. Now instead we get the baking spice, and then I also attribute the rose petal coming from maybe more of a carbonic maceration that may be going on at the bottom of the tank.
Okay.
So you get this real pretty rose petal, and then you get the baking spice, and then also the tannin profile also really changes quite a bit.
A great sense of depth and elegance on the nose.
That's good wine.
That's nice. I think some of the rose petals coming through again. Fantastic acidity. It sets gently on the palate, and there's this great evolution of flavors as the wine just kind of opens up as it transitions, through the middle to the finish. Good cherries, good apple flavors coming along with the acidity again. Yeah, super enjoyable.
I totally agree with the cherries. I'm getting almost like a hint of grapefruit or something just in the mid palate, but the length of the mid palate is fantastic, right? It seems to linger on the palate even after you swallow it with a lot of intensity. And then the acidity and tannins are very, very balanced to the rest of the wine. 10-15 second long finish easily. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Texture on the tannins are really enjoyable. Just a little bit of support, but they stay smooth, they stay gentle.
And that's the whole cluster tannin aspect. That's one of the reasons why we do it. To go back to the 3-barrel, we do a lot of the reason why we do whole cluster with 3-barrel and make a 3-barrel is really to make an age-worthy wine. Our 3-barrel is intended to be our long-term cellar wine. We want people to buy that and just stick in their cellar and come back to it. Hopefully we can start doing more like 20, 30 years, but that'll show. We'll have to check that out in 20, 30 years from now. But we do that whole cluster to it because I really think that tannin profile really adds to the aging of the wine also. And I think that this, of course, this wine I think is from 09 is going to be here to stay for a while.
Why only 3 barrels? Why did it become the 3-barrel? Was there any significance behind that?
Not really. I mean, we wanted to keep the production low. So, so we chose a name that we can't manipulate the the amount of. So this is always going to be 3 barrels, and people will know that, so we can't make 10 barrels of the 3-barrel. That doesn't work. So we're committed to doing that. So,
good way to stick
get
to your
hands
guns
on this wine now.
I'm saying kind of a treat for those those fortunate enough to get introduced to you guys early, right? That's cool.
So the production is small on this. How many bottles do you guys produce of this?
About 70 cases, 72 cases. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's very low.
Nothing.
Yeah.
And then the 2008 they sold out last year. I remember we did it right around Christmas, and we're both like, man, this is so good. We need to get more, and it was hard.
It was already almost gone.
It was hard to get more.
Yeah.
And man, this wine
is right
up there too. Yeah, this is again definitely one of the best 2009s that I've had too. This is fantastic wine.
Not as weighty as the 08. This is almost weightless on the palate, which is I really like about it too. Right? I mean, just with 09, some of the wines I just had an 09 last night that was very weighty, very ripe, and this is just elegant and weightless and provides all of that intensity and flavor without any sort of strain on the palate. Good stuff. Very good stuff. So thank you guys for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Killer show today, right? 4 awesome wines, some great talk about farming, a new label, good conversation. And ready to wrap it up. You guys have a question you'd like to ask the audience? Maybe we can get some responses. Some people have been better about putting comments up lately, so we might even hear back. Anything you want to ask?
I'd really like to go back to the organic and biodynamic thing and ask your viewers out there, is biodynamic or organic important to them?
Awesome. So chime in if that matters to you. If that matters to you when you're out shopping for wine, or even
Not even wine, but
Oh.
produce too.
fantastic.
There are, yeah.
Yeah, speak up. It'd be great to see who out of our audience really finds that important. We have heard a couple comments that they want of people that do want us to focus more on that kind of wine in our show. So, yeah, looking forward to hearing from you. Thanks so much for doing the show. This is always a
guys.
blast, and love providing this kind of content to the people who watch too. So,
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
see you next year.
Thank you.
So.
Bye, guys.